Shia LaBeouf, best known by me for this.
What's living if you never pull your shorts down and slide on the ice, Ren?
And if that's before your time, or you just didn't watch as much TV as I did back in the early 2000s, you might know him more for one of these more bizarre moments in the last few years. Shia LaBeouf has had a whirlwind and unexpected journey in both his personal and film life. He's had a string of arrests and problematic public outbursts to put it lightly. But a few years back, while filming Fury, a World War II movie, as he immersed himself into this role of a faith-based character, found himself in the thick of questioning his faith and searching for understanding, leading him to claim to have a real experience with God and becoming a Christian man. But this newfound faith was shortly lived, because right after his profession of faith and the film was done, Shia declared later on his next project that he actually didn't believe in God anymore, but had heard from God through one of his co-stars on Peanut Butter Falcon. And if that wasn't bad or confusing enough for you, this story was followed up by ex-girlfriends bringing to light abusive allegations and other criminal charges to him back in 2020. Well, now it's 2022 and Shia LaBeouf has re-emerged with a completely different outlook and an interview with Bishop Barron, saying now he has a real faith in God and is a practicing Catholic. He discovered his new faith while preparing for a star role in another movie where he played a faith-based character. If this sounds familiar, it should. This has left many wondering then, is this faith real this time, or is he just trying to get attention for another upcoming project and get back in the limelight? And what should the Christian response be then to all of this? All that and more is coming up right after this. Now, Shia has always been a great communicator and storyteller. I remember listening a few years ago, back when his first couple of arrests happened, him share this story on a late night show, and the guy is very captivating. He knows how to get the attention of an audience, and God has definitely given him a gift. Why do I bring this up before jumping into any of these interviews? I want to acknowledge this because I think with that gift combined with his past profession of faith, saying he found God during Fury, and how it's similar to this situation, can make anyone want to be skeptical and cautious moving forward with saying anything about his faith here. But the first clip I want to share and react to is from another interview he did recently with Jon Bernthal, another actor you might recognize from things like The Walking Dead or Punisher. In this clip, the two of them sit down and talk about Shia's past and his understanding of faith and God during Fury, and give some insights into what he thought God was and what led him to actually finding his way to God. Check this out.
I played with faith. You know, when we did Fury, I was toiling with faith, but it was all like the purpose was performative.
What was it's about intentionality.
Right.
To be good in the movie.
Right.
Not to save yourself or save somebody else.
My opinion about God before this happened, before the pain struck, before my world had crumbled, was art, love, and God, they all mean the same thing. They're synonymous. And as an artist who creates art, I found myself in a godly position often, right? Where I was in charge. And I had also been told my whole life, like, your life is your life. You have to make with it what you can, you know? You gotta be a good guy, and then you gotta get married, and then you gotta get a house, and you gotta get a job and do good at your job, and like, your life is your life, and things will work out if you put effort in, and you know, it's up to you. And I always really felt that, and it made it hard to believe in God.
So he starts by saying it was all performative and acting, that really he felt that he was God at the end of the day because he was the one making things happen, that because of the work that he did and the money that he earned and his skills to make it all work together, that there was no need for anything or anyone else, no other type of God, because in his own eyes, he was God. I think that could happen for a lot of us. We see that our lives are dictated by us and we want to be the God of our own life. Listen, though, to how he talks about his work here once it started to get away from him and his response to that. Check this out.
These early days in my what now looks like a salvific journey from my side, I was still egotistical on max. I was still grasping at straws. How do I hold on to what I've lost? How do I build a career again? How do I, and so when this director who I respected, I had known he made movies that I really loved. You know, Bad Lieutenant for me is one of the greatest performances ever made, and I know he's an actor's director, and the fact that there was this director reaching out to me, because at this point I'm nuclear. Nobody wants to talk to me, including my mother. The manager's not calling, the agent's not calling. I'm not connected to the business anymore. And so the fact that this man reached out to me felt like something like, in my egoic mind, wow, this is a miracle.
This is my chance.
This is my chance. This is my chance. And so my ego shows up. And now I'm like, yeah, well, Padre Pio. And my ego is what makes me research Pio. It's not my Catholicism or my yearnings
So you thought
towards
this would be
God.
a cool role for me to play.
Great, now I can get back on the horse. You know?
Yeah, okay.
And so I start researching Pio, and as I'm researching Pio, he tells me about his plans to make a movie, and he tells me that Willem Dafoe is going to be in the movie. And now I'm really in ego. Wait, so I can go from bottom barrel to working with Willem Dafoe? This is my chance, you know, back on the hustle, back on the ego.
Yeah.
And I start leaning into this thing, and he says, well, if you want to do this role, I need you to start researching. Go up and find I need you to go find a seminary.
So he acknowledges that there was no real spiritual life or real motivation to want to learn or grow or trust in God. That even his recovery was just a way for him to take some time to write a script to get back on track to where he wanted to be. But let's switch it up and look at how he actually came to faith then, if this is where he was, if this is where he was at. But check this out.
He was another invite for a person who felt totally depraved when I walked in. You know, I walked into this, my life was on fire. I was walking out of hell. It wasn't like I willingly came in here on a white horse singing show tunes. I came in here on fire, and I didn't want to be an actor anymore, and my life was a mess, complete mess, and I had hurt a lot of people, and I felt deep shame and deep guilt. I didn't like to go outside much. I really, I had a yearning not be here anymore. You know, I was on my way out.
Is that where you were when you accepted the role of Padre Pio?
So this is why when you spoke about the role, I wanted to kind of dive in there because it's kind of formative to how this all happened to me. I was willing because pain made me willing to go about this in a different way than I had previously, because it felt like my managerial skills are what are going to amount to a fulfilled existence.
Yeah.
When all of my designs failed, when all of my plans went out the window, when my life had led to serious infliction of pain and damage on other people, I threw up my hands like, my plans are garbage and I don't want to be here anymore, and I have no, that was required to enter Pio. You had to actually, it's why it feels like celestial mathematics or some kind of divine, it feels way, too coincidental to be a coincidence. So I drive up there and I park my truck and I start living in the parking lot. And I'm immersing myself in this world, and I'm sending videos back to Willem and Abel, who at the time were, working on the script, and I'm falling into a group of men that met me in San Lorenzo, namely a guy named Brother Jude, who starts talking to me about the gospel. And he says, well, if you're gonna play Pio, you need to read the gospel. And so I'd never read the gospel, and he's reading Matthew to me.
So you've never read the Gospel of Matthew straight through?
I'm reading
it for the first time.
I read it for the first time, and things start to strike me, like John the Baptist.
Yeah, okay.
Like the story of John the Baptist, being a reformed hedonist, being this man who's wearing like this who was sort of like scraggly and like kind of felt like a old Western character from some kind of I don't know, like he felt like a cowboy.
Eating locust and wearing
he felt like kind of rustic and strong and masculine. And my opinion of Christ at this point felt almost like I was reading about a Buddhist, like this very soft, fragile, all loving, all listening, but no ferocity, no romance.
Then you hadn't read the gospel.
I hadn't read the gospel
at that point.
And I just had this art that I had seen of like this very soft,
more feminized.
Jesus. Yes. And so I hadn't had this idea of like the Old Testament Christ on a horse, cape dipped in blood, sword. I had none of that was in my lexicon of knowledge. So all I knew about was this very soft, meek Jesus, which didn't fit into my idea of what masculinity would be. I come from my dad was a Mongol biker, it's like it wasn't appealing to me. And then I read about John the Baptist, and it became quite appealing. The grizzle.
Yeah.
And then you get further into the gospel and you start getting into like elements of this like redemptive, it felt like I started reading about a route. I started like reading a map, towards something that felt like let go. That's really what I got out of the Gospels. If I could wrap it up in 2 words, it was let go. And at that time when I was reading it, I was holding on so tight to a life that I was slipping away through my hands, to 35 years of management, that the gospel gave me this invite to just let go.
He goes on to talk about how as he continued to read and grow in his understanding of the Bible, he also began to grow in friendships with those in the church around him. Look.
At the time in my life, like I didn't want to swim anymore. I had a gun on the table. I was out of here. I didn't want to be alive anymore when all of this happened, okay? Shame like I had never experienced before. Kind of shame, you forget how to breathe. You don't know where to go. You can't go outside to get like a taco. Like you don't want to go anywhere.
And that's where you are when you're up there reading the gospel and thinking about the playing tide repeal. You're in that state.
Yes, but I'm also in this like, this deep desire to like hold on.
Yeah.
And so I read the gospel with this man, Jude, and I keep hearing like in many different variations of it. I'm not gonna explain the whole gospel here, nor do I need to, it's you. But I keep hearing let go. And to a person who's been gripping so tight for so long, it feels like, it just feels like, it just feels like the right move to let go, like complete surrender for real. And it stops being this like prep of a movie, and it starts being something that feels beyond all that. And I stop sending videos. Like at a certain point with Jude, I just like really fall in. And then I meet these women, Sister Lucia of the Sacred Heart Sisters, who starts really like catechizing me in a very real way, in a very like, let's go through it, let's talk about it paragraph by paragraph. And what happened was, there also happened to be like a meeting at the church for this other spiritual program that I'm in, right next door to Sister Lucia's. So I'd wake up in the morning, 9 a.m., I'd go to my meeting, and then 10 a.m. I'd be with Sister Lucia, and then 11 a.m. I'd be with Brother Jude, and then 12 I'd be with Father James, who's now in Berlin. But Father James was like this, Father James felt like an old sheriff. Right. I don't know if you've met Father James?
Sure, yeah.
He's like a grandfather.
Right.
His hand is enormous.
Yeah.
He made me feel safe. He would just put his hand on my shoulder sometimes. And he wouldn't say much to me. He wasn't, but he was also like this Archie Bunker character, where like his love felt like you had it, like you were pulling it out of him.
Yeah.
And he was always around. And I started falling into this group, and I'm living there. So I'm taking showers in there, and I'm eating with them, and we're hanging out. And
they're drawing you into the Christian, the Catholic thing. They're kind of drawing you into the gospel, into a certain way of life.
But more than that, it's not even like they're drawing me into like laughter. They're like sharing jokes with me. It's like we're just like hanging out. And at this time, I had no friends in my life. You know,
what did Jesus do with people when he first met them, typically? He'd eat and drink with them. You know, so you think of Jesus, well, he's giving the Sermon on the Mount. Well, yes, he does, but the typical move of Jesus was, well, let's get around the table and we'll talk.
Yeah.
And he's talking to prostitutes and sinners and tax collectors, and, you know, so that move of theirs, you know, to kind of draw you in.
Yeah.
Draw you into their life.
Yeah, and I'm eating their ice cream, and I'm eating them out of house and home, and I'm filling the tacos back up, but like I'm really like, they're not asking nothing of me. They're not asking me to sign nothing. They're not asking me to do nothing or take pictures. I'm just like sitting around, and I'm petting their cats, and I'm hanging out, you know?
So he is learning from those around him, which is a huge lesson we can all learn from. As the famous quote goes, "Show me your friends and I will show you your future." Shia built up new friendships out of almost a necessity, since nobody else would talk to him, with those in the church, and they helped him grow and learn not just the gospel, but what it looked like to get alone with Jesus and how to pray. Both of these interviews are each over an hour long, so we don't have time today to get into all of what was said, but it all follows the same sentiment and thoughts, putting Shia now in a place where he says he is ready and willing to start making amends the rest of his life to those who he wronged and he hurt, starting with his wife and family. He knows he is able to do it and be stable because he understands who God is and what he has done for him. So let's get to the question that this whole video was surrounding around. Do I think this transformation is real? I would say cautiously, it seems to be. And as for the Christian response, I don't think it's our job to sit around and speculate on if he is or isn't, or to dissect apart his complete thoughts that we see in this interview and go, okay, well, the theological furniture isn't perfectly aligned yet, because if that's what was needed for salvation, none of us could get a perfect theology or have a perfect understanding of all things. But if the essentials are there, that's what's important. But instead, that rather we would be praying for him to continue to grow in his understanding of the gospel and of who God is and what the Bible has to say, and allow God and the use of time to see if this is authentic and real, or another attempt just to gain some popularity. Some out there who are worried about the Catholic versus Christian part of all of this. Does he really understand salvation? My ask is, for every comment you want to leave, I didn't say don't leave a comment, but for everyone you want to leave, that you would pray twice as much on the matter for him, that God would continue to lead him to truth and guide him to true understanding, Shia's story is similar to another person who is in the public eye and shared in achieving much success, but feeling empty and hopeless before finding Jesus. If you want to hear about this YouTuber's story, click on the video right over here and hear about an atheist who got turned into a Christian. But until next time, guys, know that you are valued and loved, and I'll see you soon.